Although the sky was gloomy, it wasn't due to nightfall. Something strange was causing the darkness, a shadow that appeared to elongate like a black hole across the world, absorbing all the light. A huge holographic image of a young man illuminated the faces of the large throng gathering in a city square as I stood atop a mountain and looked down. A name appeared in my head. Baron Trump's voice was authoritative and carried with ease. I watched as people went to their knees, arms lifted in worship, and tears flowing down their faces as the hologram moved, spreading into cities all over the world. Together, we will rise above separation, chaos, and into a new period of unity. People bowed as the globe was shown onto tall screens everywhere. His words weren't the only ones that were hypnotic. They carried a weight that no human voice should, and then I saw the symbol. It wasn't a flag, logo, or crest. It was something completely new, a global emblem that was shining faintly on the arms and foreheads of people in the crowd. It looked like a digital mark, an upside-down question mark combined with a flower and a sun. It was strange, and I still don't know what it means, but I could sense its significance. The realization struck me like a blow. Jesus is standing next to me. His voice was calm but sorrowful. Was firm but quiet. The hour has come when deceit will cover the earth like a veil. You must speak the truth. I wanted to turn my head away from the crowd and the young man whose image loomed over the world, but I was unable to do so because his face was recognizable as one connected to fame, wealth, and power that I had seen countless times before. Baron Trump, before I go any further, I should probably tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Dr. Elaine Ward, and I have been a history professor at a medium-sized university in the Midwest for the past 12 years. I specialize in ancient civilizations, but my passion is eschatology, or the study of the end times. I wasn't raised in a religious household. The interest in eschatological started out as a scholarly curiosity. I was drawn to the recurrent themes of apocalyptic literature from various cultures, such as the Book of Revelation, Norse mythology, and even Mayan prophecies, but as I dug deeper into the Bible, something changed. It wasn't just an intellectual exercise anymore, and the more I studied, the more I realized how much of it felt true. However, even though I wouldn't describe myself as devout, I did believe in God, but my faith was more of a subtle undercurrent than a driving force in my life that changed the day I passed away. The incident that claimed my life was as unexpected as it was unexpected. I've had a rare food allergy my entire life. Although I've always been cautious, something fell through the gaps that day. I won't go into the details. Details of what I ate are irrelevant. What matters is that within minutes, my throat started to close, and I remember gasping for air as I fell to the ground, the room spinning, and my phone being just out of reach. For a brief moment, panic overcame me, but then a strange calm descended upon me, blurring my vision until the last thing I saw was sunlight coming in through my kitchen window. When I opened my eyes, I was standing in a place that felt both familiar and foreign. It was a huge, limitless area that wasn't physically like a kitchen or a hospital room filled with a light that came from no source that I could see before me. I had read about Jesus in the Bible, but none of it could have prepared me for the reality of his presence. He wasn't grandiose or imposing, but there was an authority on him and a love so overwhelming that it brought me to my knees. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. Instead, he just said, "Come, I have something to show you," and then the vision started. I was thrown into a flurry of scenes that happened so fast that it was difficult to process them. I saw governments gathering behind me negotiating deals behind closed doors with guys who were not politicians yet had greater authority than kings. I witnessed technology developing at an unthinkable rate and fusing with human biology in ways that made it difficult to distinguish between humans and machines. Then I witnessed a young, calm man enter a room full of leaders, who stood there looking at him with a mixture of reverence and awe. This is where it all started according to Jesus. The first thing he showed me was a world on the verge of collapse. It wasn't just one problem, everything was occurring at once, and I saw people's finances failing, economies collapsing, and currencies failing fundamental requirements. Grocery stores had lengthy lineups outside, and their shelves were empty. Protests in the streets descended into violence as citizens demanded answers from governments that were unable to provide them. Natural disasters then followed, with earthquakes leveling cities, floods engulfing entire regions, odd weather patterns upsetting agriculture, famine spreading not only in isolated places but throughout the world, and finally, wars. I observed nations betraying one another's alliances. Tanks rolled into cities, fighter jets screamed through the skies, leaders who had once stood for peace stood in front of cameras giving speeches full of rage and blame, and then, in the middle of it all, I saw him, but he wasn't in the middle of the action or on a battlefield. Instead, he showed up on all news network screens during a government meeting. Mobile phones. He was young, tall, and striking, and his presence seemed to command attention without effort. At first, I didn't understand. I knew who Baron Trump was. Of course, but I couldn't see how he fit into the chaos that was going on around me. Then Jesus spoke again, and I saw Baron standing behind a podium, speaking to a crowd. His voice was calm, confident, and reassuring. He didn't sound like a politician or a celebrity, but rather like someone who had all the answers, without making empty promises or using ambiguous language. Using platitudes, he outlined a strategy for re-establishing order, stabilizing economies, and bringing peace to a broken globe. He talked about innovation, unity, and a time when humanity could. His remarks struck a chord with those in need of answers all throughout the world, and the crowd exploded in applause, their faces beaming with optimism. I saw as his power increased and leaders from all over the world started to side with him, putting aside their own plans to support his. Businesses promised to contribute to his projects, and even religious leaders started to commend him, referring to him as a gift to humanity. Jesus allowed me to experience his charisma like they did. His promises were so alluring that they were like a narcotic that allayed their anxieties and gave them hope, but below it all, I sensed something more sinister. He had no light, no love, and no truth. His promises and words were hollow. Hollow, but the world was unable to see it because they were so desperate that they were prepared to follow anyone who could help them get out of their suffering. This is how it starts. Jesus claimed that deceit masquerading as hope, control, and unity made the picture more vivid and more intolerable in its clarity. Baron Trump's ascent wasn't abrupt, rather, it was planned, intentional, and meticulous. I witnessed how each crisis, setback, and leadership lapse had prepared the way for his elevation. First, he seemed like a reluctant leader who had been thrown into cirque. Iron's words in the spotlight were humble, as though I witnessed the signs start to appear gradually before becoming clear in one vision. I saw Baron standing in front of a large assembly of world leaders at a massive summit, with flags from every country surrounding him as he signed a document known as a global covenant that promised peace and stability. He carried the burden of saving the world, not for his own glory but for the sake of humanity. The covenant was heralded as the most important accomplishment in human history, a unification of nations never before achieved, but Jesus exposed what was beneath the surface. The covenant was about more than just peace, it was a consolidation. Enormous power, granting Baron previously unheard of control over global systems, finance, technology, and even faith. Daniel 9 verse 27 flashed through my mind. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1-7, and in the middle of the 7 he will stop offering sacrifices. I realized that this was the fulfillment of that prophecy, and that the covenant was spiritual as well as political. Next, I witnessed Baron doing what the world would call miracles. In one scene, he entered a city that had been devastated by an earthquake, and the debris split in front of him as though by some invisible force, revealing survivors trapped. In one, he stood in front of a furious mob, while in another, people gasped and called him a savior, comparing him to Christ. Wildfire, the crowd seemed to be in amazement as he raised his hand, but Jesus made it clear to me that they weren't miracles but rather deceptions. The most terrifying aspect of the vision was the development of a global system connected to Baron's leadership using advanced AI and quantum computing. His team created a digital platform that unified currency identification and access to basic information. Illusions designed to manipulate and control Revelation 1:3-1-13 came to mind, and it performed great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to the earth in full view of the people. Resources. People could first sign up for the scheme voluntarily in order to get benefits, health of food, shelters, care, but eventually it became required. Without it, people couldn't travel, buy, or sell, or even survive. The system's mark was initially a discrete digital ID that was integrated into phones or wearable technology, but it eventually changed into a more intrusive physical. The Bible's admonition, which resonated in my heart, also mandated that everyone, no matter how big or small, wealthy or poor, free or enslaved, have a mark on their right hand or forehead so they can't purchase or sell until they have the mark. Revelation 1316-17, Baron's presence throughout stayed composed, comforting, and convincing, but Jesus showed me the forces at work behind him that the world was unable to perceive. I observed shadowy, dark entities directing his every action by whispering in his ear. These were spiritually evil, not human. Jesus' voice returned, sorrowful, and the Baron wasn't acting alone. He was a vessel carrying out a plan that had been in motion for ages. He would fool the world, even the elect, if they didn't remain attentive. One image remained in my thoughts when the vision ended. As the earth fell, Baron stood atop the stage, his face serene and illuminated by artificial light. At his feet, the system's insignia dimly shone in the distance, serving as a continual reminder of the authority he as Baron spoke. He raised his right hand and the symbol I had seen earlier appeared to glow faintly. It wasn't a sign of hope, rather, it was a mark of control. Join us, he said in a soothing, almost hypnotic tone. This is your chance to be a part of something greater, a future free from division and fear. One by one, the crowd started to line up to receive the mark, a digital implant placed on their right hands or foreheads. It was done seamlessly, instantaneous and painless. When they got it, their faces lit up as they lifted their arms in loyalty. The mark, which was a declaration of loyalty and a pledge to Baron and the system he represented, was not just about buying and selling. Without it, people would have been cut off from society and unable to access food, shelter, or medical care. However, Jesus allowed me to feel the truth behind the mark, which was not just physical but also spiritual. Accepting it meant rejecting him. As they approached him, the audience started chanting Baron's name, their voices blending into a wave of affection. Some of them dropped to their knees, and as they approached him, he lifted his arms, reveling in their adoration. He had a serene expression. Calm, almost sacred, but upon closer inspection, I noticed otherwise. They've selected a shadow that appeared to pulse with every cheer from the crowd and a flicker of darkness behind his eyes. They trust in man rather than me in the vision, and they worship the made rather than the creator, Jesus remarked, his voice cutting through the noise. As I watched the scene unfold, I noticed a small group of people standing apart from the crowd. Their faces were filled with fear, but they were also determined, and they clung to one another while whispering prayers. They had rejected the mark. They were the remaining faithful who had decided to put their faith in God rather than the system, and they were ridiculed and hunted. Being denied access to the comforts of the world, but their spirits blazed with a brilliance that prevented the throng from hearing Jesus' speech was full of both grief and hope, and even in the darkest moments, my light will shine through those who have faith in me. Baron's words reverberated around the area as he lifted his hands again. Together, we shall usher in a new era in which nobody will be left behind. The words hit me like a blow from a time when we are gods of our own destiny. The audience cheered, their voices resounding despite the fact that it was a clear rejection of God and a declaration that humanity no longer needed him. I felt the weight of the earth Jesus of their own volition, the separation, the loss, the everlasting repercussions. The vision came to an end with a last eerie picture: Baron standing by himself on the stage, his face lit by the mark sign. When the world bowed before him, the vision changed once more. It seemed as though the chaos of the crowd and the overwhelming worship of the beast had been restored, and it faded into a stillness that was both reassuring and sobering. I could feel Jesus' presence near me, and his voice was calm but urgent. He said that there was still hope, but that time was running out. Jesus then started to show me the spiritual reality behind the mark, the system, and the worship of the beast. It was a decision to put faith in the world's solutions rather than merely focusing on convenience or survival. In place of God's sovereignty, he allowed me to sense the mark's pull as it preyed on fear, providing security at a chaotic moment, but he also revealed to me things that the outside world was blind to. Jesus showed me the remnant, the tiny group of believers who rejected the mark and the system. They were dispersed, living on the periphery of society, hunted down, and persecuted, but their faith was unwavering. The emptiness it created is how it separated people from his presence. They will call it progress. Unwavering, they depended on him to provide for them, sharing what little they had with each other. I witnessed miracles among these are my people, loaves of bread proliferating, ailments cured by prayer, and strength derived from a peace the world couldn't understand. According to Jesus, they put their faith in me rather than in human deeds, and my light will shine through them. Their lives weren't easy, they had to deal with rejection, starvation, and cold, but they also had joy and hope that no amount of hardship could ever take them away. Jesus returned his focus to me and continued, tell them to prepare not with stores of food or weapons, but with faith, tell them to know. His eyes were sharp but gentle. He demonstrated to me the significance of keeping my word, seeking me above all else, and the system's greatest weapon was isolation, which cut people off from true connection. However, those who resisted would find strength in him and in each other. Time is short, he repeated, but it is not too late as the vision began to fade. Jesus sent me one more message, don't be afraid, I'm with you. The world will fall apart, but my kingdom will endure. Have faith in me, and you'll find life. Tell others about this, and many will hear it and come back to me. The weight of the image lingered with me after I woke up. It wasn't merely a dream or a preview of what lay ahead, it was an appeal for action. I was in a hospital bed when I woke up, and I knew I couldn't be silent. The bright lights, the faint beep of machinery, and the sterile antiseptic air made me feel as though I had been thrust into another universe. A nurse stood at my side, her face beaming with joy. We thought we lost you, she murmured quietly. I nodded, but I didn't answer since my thoughts were focused on what I had seen and what I now know rather than the hospital or what had happened to me. I was aware that the weight of the vision Jesus had given me was contributing to my chest feeling heavy. In addition to the devastation my body had experienced hours with me, I laid there silently going over every detail in my head, including the people, the mark, and the deceit. The way the world regarded the Republican and, most importantly, Baron Trump, and how his ascent reflected the prophecies I had researched for years, left me unsure of where to begin and how to approach someone who would believe me. At first, I only notified a select few close friends and family members, but the urgency Jesus left me with was clear. I was merely a lecturer at a tiny university, not a theologian or prophet. Some of my friends, whom I trusted to listen without passing judgment, were stunned into silence, while others attempted to explain what I saw by claiming it was a hallucination or the result of oxygen loss, but a friend and fellow Christian took hold of my hand and insisted that I tell it because others needed to hear it. Her words stuck with me for the following few weeks, and as I recovered, I started to realize how much responsibility I had. Jesus hadn't shown me these things only for me, he had given me a message, and I wasn't supposed to keep it. I began by telling my experience to the students in my eschatological seminars, and they were fascinated not by the dramatic specifics but rather by the message's underlying optimism and promise. From there, I started giving speeches to church groups, community gatherings, and anybody else who would listen. I explained the vision, the perils of putting your faith in material systems, and the significance of maintaining your faith. I stressed the need for preparation, not for hoarding material possessions, but for developing your faith, studying the Bible, and creating strong, supportive communities. The vision altered not only how I spoke but also how I lived. I no longer held on to my scholastic successes or my meticulously collected routines as an alternative. I grew closer to my faith and trusted God to lead me in ways I had never experienced before. I started doing more volunteer work, spending time with people who were having difficulties and putting connections before accomplishments. In light of what I had witnessed, I also deepened my study of the Bible, discovering connections I had previously missed. Every word felt alive, vital, and urgent as I told this story. The world will get darker before it gets better, the system will rise, and the deception will spread, but Jesus has already won the ultimate victory. My hope is not to instill fear, but to instill faith. Urges us to be steadfast in our faith in Him and to spread His light in the dark. He told me this: since I am with you, so I won't be afraid to spread this message at any cost, because there isn't much time and the decision is obvious. When Jesus showed me a vision concerning the coming of the Antichrist after I died, it rocked me to my core, and I can't keep quiet.